Hi everybody, I'm Janine Lauschat and this is the 1137th edition of Motorsports Unlimited. For all intensive purposes, the winter of 2008-2009 is over. It's time to put the snowmobiles away and get ready for the racetracks and outdoor car shows. Just by chance, I happened to mention to Bill that my new Lincoln MKZ's four-wheel drive was a big help in the winter. He looked at me like I said something terrible. Four-wheel drive? Four-wheel drive? Do you ever watch the show? Sometimes, not all the technical stuff. I'd better watch this one.
Bill says all this stuff is very important. The question he had to answer was, how can we explain it? To do that, he called on our friends at ABC Auto Parts in Blue Island, Illinois. These folks have all the props necessary to help us help everyone understand. That's right, I said everyone. I don't know what I've just read. Bill, help!
These three guys are going to play a crucial role in at least the beginning of this program today. We are at ABC Auto Parts in Blue Island, and one of the reasons we like to come down here so much is these guys have every automotive prop you can imagine. Now, this storyline began, let me step over here because I don't want our camera shot to get into the doorway back there with all the big light on it. This storyline actually began, as a matter of fact, Jim Sr., do you remember Diana Sleece? She was here a couple of times doing programs?
Yes, I do.
All right, this actually started with a comment on her part. We were talking about cars and how the public doesn't really know or understand the cars and the vehicles and the features that they have and all that. And here's a girl, Diana Sleece, has been with us for, 4 or 5 years. And we just got to talking, and somehow I mentioned Audi Quattro, and it turns out she has an Audi Quattro. And guess what? She doesn't have a guess what the Quattro means. She didn't even know if it meant anything, if it was named like Sam, Audi Sam or something. She didn't know that it actually meant something. So we're going to have two topics on today's program. We're going to talk about all-wheel drive versus four-wheel drive. Now, it sounds like we're saying exactly the same thing, and we are. It means all-wheel drive, all the wheels drive, or four wheels drive. And if you have four wheels, that's all wheels driving. However, common usage of this kind of language, there is a huge difference between four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. We came down here to talk about that, but before we get to that, we're going to talk about sprung versus unsprung weight ratios. Now, this is all pretty exciting stuff. Would you agree?
Oh, this is great. Yes, Bill.
Please tell the folks who you are.
Jim Watson.
Okay, you're actually junior.
Yeah.
No, you're the third now.
I'm the third now, yes.
You're the third, okay, and you are?
Joe Watson.
And you're the youngest of the Watson boys?
Yes.
Or is your sister younger than you?
No, I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest of the whole family?
Yes.
Okay, and of course, on this end, we've got the patriarch of the family, our old friend, Jim Watson Sr. How are you doing today,
Very
Jim?
good.
Okay, you're going to join us at the Rock. I'm doing this on the air,
sure
so I got
am.
it. So I got it on tape.
I'll be there.
You'll be there. Okay, we're talking
be
about
there.
Thanksgiving morning down at the Rock. Does anything I've said so far make any sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. You know that people very often don't have a guess what their car has when they see things like DOHC on the trunk deck, meaning double overhead cam. They have no idea what it means. You're probably aware of that.
That is correct.
Okay, some of these things are very, very important. For example, with Diana Sleece's car, the Audi Quattro, Audi did not originate all-wheel drive cars. In fact, the first one I believe on record is a Jensen out of England in the mid-60s, maybe as late as 70, but it never really was a commercial success, never went anywhere. Audi really pioneered the all-wheel drive cars with the Audi Quattro system. What a lot of people don't know is that Audi has had at least 4 or 5 generations of all-wheel drive system. Are you aware of that? They didn't have the same all-wheel drive system throughout the range of Quattro.
No, that's news to me, Bill.
I'll tell you when it's even bigger news, because the other vehicle we have that's going to be a prop here, even bigger news, is that Subaru doesn't get nearly enough credit for what they do. Subaru right now today has 4 separate all-wheel drive systems for their line. Did you know that?
Nope, didn't know that either.
Okay, a lot of people don't know that. It's not really common knowledge. If you get an automatic transmission Subaru, it has a different all-wheel drive system than the stick shift Subaru. If you get the real off-road model, it has a different all-wheel drive system. I know none of this makes sense right now, but it's going to make sense today. Now, we've got these guys up here, and I want to make sure we introduce them. Guys, if you would, come on over here, because they're going to play an essential role here in just a second. Please lean down here and tell the folks who you are.
My name is Leroy Ramsey.
Leroy Ramsey, and where are you from, Leroy?
Chicago, Illinois.
Okay, you got to lean way over here because my arms are so short.
Dave Jedriel from Linwood, Illinois.
And?
William Petrolak from Cal City.
Okay, these guys have no idea what I need them for, but this is really, really important because in addition to all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, we're going to talk about sprung versus unsprung weight ratio. This is really, really important. It has so much to do with how well a car can ride, what the ride and handling of a car is, and yet few people are even aware of it. For example, why did Mercedes all these years have independent rear suspension? Now, when we talk about independent suspension, people seem to have an idea, well, the independent suspension because it follows the ground better. That's all kind of true and everything, but it's not really the most important thing. Most important thing about independent rear suspension is you have a much more favorable sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Now, what is sprung? I thought about this long and hard. How could I demonstrate sprung and unsprung weight? And I said, well, I'm going to call my friends at ABC and see if they can come up with some props. I said, first of all, I need a big four-wheel drive vehicle. This is what they got for me, Jeep. Nice going.
Thanks.
Nicely done. We've got a big, Chuck, pull your camera shot back so the audience can see what this is. This is what you would call a traditional four-wheel drive vehicle. It's heavy, it's rugged, it can handle some off-road use and all that. It is very definitely not an all-wheel drive system, even though all the wheels drive. You're going to understand that later. First, before we get into turning these things up and down, upside down, which we're going to do, is I want to demonstrate sprung and unsprung weight. If you notice, we've got tires over here and wheels. And Chuck, can you get underneath there real good? Can you show the audience the banjo unit? He's nodding his head. Show the banjo unit, the rear end housing, the differential, the shocks, the brakes, wheels on this side. If the audience sees all that, then pull your camera shot back a little bit and show them the chassis of the vehicle. What you're going to find is everything that you just looked at underneath there is all unsprung weight. Everything up here is sprung weight. It's not quite that simple. We're going to find out about in a minute. And now, guys, this is your part of the job. Chuck, give me a shot. I want a shot of the vehicle, but include the rear end and the wheels and all that, because I'm going to show the difference between sprung and unsprung weight and show what it is. Go ahead, guys. Jump up and down now. Okay. Everything moving is sprung weight. Everything that's not moving is unsprung weight, meaning the tires are on the ground, the wheels are connected to the tires, that's all unsprung weight. The banjo unit is connected to the hubs with the wheels, so this actually moves along with the ground, not with the chassis. This is all unsprung weight, this is all sprung weight. It is absolutely essential to reduce the unsprung weight as much as possible, to reduce the weight of the rear end housing, to reduce the weight of the wheels. Even the tires have gotten, the cars have handled better since they've gotten rid of tubes and tires because tubes have weight. You want everything that's unsprung to be as light as possible. Now there's two approaches to this, and guys, you can come on back in here. I didn't mean to chase you out of the shot. There's two approaches to this. For example, Luda, one of the girls on our show, has a Lincoln Town Car. Lincoln Town Car has a great ride, but it doesn't have independent rear suspension. It's got suspension like this. One of the unknown secrets, and I say this now because I found out I can't put them on my van because the bolt pattern is different, is nobody really realizes those Lincoln wheels are exceptional pieces. Those are forged aluminum. They're as light as race car wheels. And the reason they went through all that trouble was to reduce the unsprung weight to get a better ride out of a car with really an antique suspension design, this big banjo unit. Now, we're going to show you in a minute how you can do this even better. But what Lincoln did, their approach was, okay, let's make the car as heavy as possible and then have the unsprung weight as far as the wheels and all that, have that as light as possible to get a better handling. Now you can do it that way. What the vehicle is concerned about is the ratio, unsprung weight to sprung weight. There's a certain ratio there. The lighter you can make this, the better it is. Or conversely, if you make this heavy, it's often been said that a heavy car rides better. Jim, you and I are the same age. Have you heard that over the years?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, and it is absolutely true, correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and the reason it's true is not because it's heavy, though. The reason it's true is because it has a better sprung to unsprung weight ratio. In the case of something like a Lincoln Town Car, they made the whole car heavy, so it ends up with a better sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Take a Mercedes, which will have just as good a ride, if not better, but they're much lighter cars. How do they do it? Lighten all this stuff, make this stuff lighter. You really want to hear all this?
Yes, I sure do.
Okay. In any event, so that's what's important. The important thing is what the manufacturers are trying to do is get a favorable, in fact, when we say favorable, the better ratio you can get, the lighter you can make this, and conversely, the heavier you can make this. But remember, when you make this heavier, you got to drag it down the road. You got to use fuel to drag it down the road. It's going to have weight that you've got to stop and all that. So it's not a good idea to make vehicles heavier just to improve the sprung to unsprung, even though that's been an approach. But there's a cuter way of doing it and a better way of doing it, and that's to try to reduce the weight of this. Now, Chuck, come back over here. I want to give the audience a little idea. Guys, if you're ready up there, give me a reasonably tight shot. I just want to see a little bit of this, a little lighter because we're actually bouncing the tires. There. Okay, Chuck, I want the audience to see this in relationship to that, and I want them to see that the rear end, we call that the rear end housing right there, that is unsprung weight. Even though it's moving a little bit in your camera shot, it's because, Chuck, go over to the camera shot on the tires. I want the audience to see that the tires are actually flexing a little bit, but the rear end, the housing, is connected to the ground. It does not move with the springs. As a matter of fact, Chuck, can you get to the shocks at all? Maybe that one under there. Can you see the shock? Is that doable? Got to nod your head if you see it. Okay. You see the shock. You see how the bottom part of the shock would be unsprung weight. You notice that it stays in relationship to the ground. The top part of the shock would be sprung weight. By the way, this goes on further and further. As we go into this, you're going to find out, like in the pieces of the springs, you can't see it now. We're going to roll this thing up on its side. Thank you, ABC. We're going to roll this thing up on its side, and we're going to show you that a piece of the spring, Chuck, if you would, this part of it over here, can you see that? Nod your head, yes. This part of the spring is actually part of the unsprung weight because it's bolted to this, what we call a banjo unit. This whole housing is called a banjo unit. That part of the leaf spring is bolted to it, so that's unsprung weight. On the other hand, the other end of the leaf spring, where it attaches to the chassis, that moves with the chassis. So you have to take a percentage of that. You say, okay, we'll say this much of it, a little rough justice here. This much of it is unsprung, this part of it is sprung, in order to come up with this sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Guys, please step back on here. Is this making any sense at all, or am I way off base?
No, it makes perfect sense, and that's the way they design tow trucks right now too, like rollback trucks.
What do you mean?
Well, when they put more weight on the truck, it rides better.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
Because you're changing the sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Now, if you could get that same achievement as far as you added so much weight. Sure. If you could get that, whatever that ratio is, let's say that ratio ends up 10 to 1. I don't know what it is, but let's say it ends up 10 to 1. If you could lighten all of the unsprung weight to end up with that 10 to 1 ratio, you wouldn't have to put weight on it to get the same ride. The sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Very, very important. Okay, I hope this makes some sense, and we're going to get into the all-wheel drive and the four-wheel drive and all that stuff too. We've got to move some stuff around because now I want to bring that Subaru in here and show the audience another way that this is done. But one more time, Chuck, show them. Big banjo unit, unsprung, wheels unsprung, tires unsprung, pieces of the leaf springs that are bolted to the banjo housing unsprung, bottom parts of the shocks unsprung, top parts of the shock sprung. And the objective is to try to make this stuff all as light as possible to achieve a better sprung to unsprung weight ratio. I hope we're getting something. We're going to bring in a car now that has a different design approach. Happens to be a Subaru because I also want this part of the show to be all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, and we're going to get into that with the Subaru and with the Jeep for comparison. This one's four-wheel drive, Subaru is all-wheel drive, and I hope you're going to understand it by the time we're done.
Okay, I get it. But it seems to me you probably need all that stuff, like the rear end, tires, wheels, etc. It doesn't look like you can get rid of any of it to make the unsprung weight lighter. Hi, I'm Janine Lauschat, trying to understand.
And I'm Patty Borowitz, wondering the same thing. Presumably, you have to have the wheels, tires, rear end, and everything else Bill pointed out to make it a car. So the question is, how can you significantly change the sprung to unsprung weight by lightening the unsprung weight if you need all that stuff?
What you are looking at, and I know it's dark in there, but what you are looking at now is the differential, and we haven't explained differential yet, but we're looking at the rear end or differential of the Subaru, and this is quite a different design. Now, Chuck, pull your camera shot all the way back because I got to get the disclaimers in here because poor Jim, I'm making these guys crazy. My visions, I know they didn't even like me to say junkyard because it's auto recycling. Okay, I know that. But my visions of this stuff is guys climbing around in the yard with torches blazing, cutting parts off. And when I told them I want you to come down here, I want to do some cutting, they don't have cutting torches here anymore. He's scared to death that we got a guy standing on top of this. So what I want the audience to know, this is all me. You guys don't do it this way.
No, we don't do anything like this.
No, I know. Am I right, Jim?
We sure don't.
No. So this is, please, give us some license for television. This is theatrical. I want it to kind of look this way, and later on we're going to cut some pieces off of the cutting torches. I had to bring in the torches. They don't even have torches. Jim, what has happened to boneyards? They don't even have torches anymore.
Oh, it's all modernized now.
Oh, boy, it's a little bit boring. I like the sparks and flames. You guys...
No.
No, you... Anyhow, this is all me. It's not... Oh, one thing real quick I want to talk about here. You talk about luckiest human beings on this planet. Well, of course, Jim's always said that. He knows how lucky he is. Great family, great business, everybody working together. Pretty cool, isn't it?
Right.
It's the best. And on top of that, you talk about people that are blessed. They are involved with the ABCs of racing. How's that? Yeah. How's that connection? The ABC, you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're talking about ARCA. We're talking about Busch. And just recently, Cup.
Yeah, cup race, yeah.
ABCs. And what I'm talking about, this show is not going to be about this today. I just want to mention it because we're going to be doing a whole show about this coming up because they got pictures and everything. But we explained to you on a previous show how these guys got involved with the Busch racing car of Ed Renzi and company, and how that a small local company could actually get on the car as a sponsor for a one-day event, just the Chicago race that you run and all that, because they run races all over the country, and it's big money to sponsor a car for a whole year. But it is feasible for a local company to jump on for a one-race deal, like say in Chicago or something like that, right? How am I doing?
That is correct.
Okay, so they did that. Well, lo and behold, we had the Chicago. Now they did it last year, and I forget, what did he finish last year?
Ed Renzi took first place.
No, last year before.
Oh, last year?
Yeah, do you recall? You guys were on the car last year.
Yeah.
You don't recall what it was?
No, I don't.
Okay. Pardon? No, it's already crashed. Yes. Okay, see, Joe remembers. Okay, this year, only their second year doing it. They ended up in the winner's circle. These guys got pictures. You got pictures of you guys in the winner's circle.
That is correct.
Unbelievable. You guys got to be happy about that.
We're thrilled.
I'll tell you something. So it can't, any local companies, local businesses out there, we're going to do a whole show about this. I just wanted to mention in advance that, yes, they won. And then they had an even bigger victory than that from my perspective. For some reason, the driver of the Renzi effort is Bobby Hamilton Jr., a real rising star, just a killer talent. And he's putting him in a few cup races this year to get ready, I think, for a cup season next year. And they left the ABC on the car when they ran the cup race with it.
Sure did. It was great.
So now we're talking about the ABCs, ARCA, Busch, and cup racing.
Absolutely.
Pretty cool. Okay, now, did I say it enough? This is me. This is all at my direction. They don't do it this way. These guys, they're going to take me out and beat me if I don't stop doing this. Okay, I'll try to be more careful. These guys, I've never seen people more safety conscious in my life. Now, let's get to the explanation of what we're doing here. Same thing again. Sprung versus unsprung weight. What's sprung and what's unsprung? Well, in the Jeep we just looked at, this entire assembly back here was unsprung weight. It was this part of the vehicle up here was sprung weight. This part of it across here was unsprung weight. Now Subaru, very cleverly, has independent rear suspension. The piece in the middle, and guys, Chuck, do you have a shot of the piece in the middle with a little bit of relationship to the car? I hope that tells the story best. Go ahead, guys, move the car up and down now. I want the audience to see that the piece in the middle is moving with the chassis. So that is now sprung weight. That is now sitting on springs. And if you'll notice the axles, and Chuck, I don't know which side you're going to, if you notice the axles, the only part of it that is unsprung is way out by the wheels. Now again, you do a little rough justice here because part of the axle is actually sprung weight. So I would take and cut the axle right in the middle and say, okay, we'll call this part out here unsprung weight, and the part in the middle sprung weight. Whether I'm off an inch or so one way or the other isn't really that important. The important thing is for the audience to understand how clever this design is. Yes, there's some advantage to getting the wheels to follow the ground better and all that stuff, but the main advantage of doing something like this is to get a dramatically improved sprung to unsprung weight ratio. The only thing back here that's unsprung now are the wheels, the tires, the hubs, and a piece of the axle is actually unsprung, sitting with the ground. The rest of it is sprung weight. Chuck, was that visible? Did it make sense at all? God, what do you think? Am I doing a good?
Sounds great.
Okay. Anyhow, the important thing, sprung to unsprung weight ratio, the important thing about this to remember is that what you want is the unsprung weight, the stuff that sits on the ground. You want that to be as light as humanly possible. If you ever went to a race, go to an IndyCar race, a Formula One race, those huge wheels and tires, they're light like paper, right?
Very light, yeah.
They're like paper, they're so light. And again, they're trying to improve the handling and the ride of the vehicle. And those cars, you're talking about cars that weigh, 12, 13, or in the case of a Formula One car, under 1,200 pounds. In the case of an Indy car, 1,500 pounds. And they ride very well because almost all of the weight is sprung weight with very, very tiny, very carefully designed parts that actually have to connect to the ground, like the tires. There's no way to get around that. You have to have the tires on the ground. In any event, I hope that this is clear, that we've explained sprung to unsprung ratio, why it's so important. And now we're going to start talking about all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive.
I think I got it.
Me too.
Subaru took the heaviest part of the rear unsprung weight,
The differential, or rear end as it is sometimes called,
and bolted it to the chassis, making it sprung weight.
Then, through a system of CV joints and light half shafts,
most of which is sprung,
sent the power to the rear wheels, thus dramatically changing the sprung to unsprung weight ratio.
And that's called independent rear suspension.
I can see how that would be a ride and handling advantage.
Now let's see about this all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive stuff.
Well, this is pretty easy to understand. It says four-wheel drive, and as Chuck pulls his camera shot back, you can see that this is, in fact, a four-wheel drive vehicle. Now, there are people that argue about how we define four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive vehicles, and I guess what we're going to do here is, because I'm the guy with the television show, so that people can all say, I saw that guy on TV say it, I'm going to define it for you so there's no more argument about this thing. But before we get to that, Paul Bushman, come on in here, because this man tells me I've only got him for another 15 minutes, and I want to make sure we get him. Please come on over here. Our regular viewers are going to remember Paul Bushman. Paul, we've been involved now with the ABC guys now for about 14 or 15 years, and our first involvement was you called us.
Yeah, that's correct. Has it really been that long?
Yeah, believe it or not, it has been that long. And tell the folks who you are.
I'm Paul Bushman. I live in Homer Glen, and I work at ABC Auto Parts.
And it used to be your brother worked here too.
Yeah.
Okay, no longer?
No.
Okay, the one thing I want to say is, looking back at those times from when we first came in here, did you guys ever think you'd be standing in the winner's circle of Busch race at a super speedway?
No, I had no idea, Bill.
Tell me that wasn't one of the highlights of your life.
Absolutely, positively, being a longtime NASCAR fan, yes, that was.
That really was. And now, the only thing that could top that, and believe me, I'm serious about this, is wouldn't you love to stand in the winner's circle at a Winston Cup event with the ABC on the car?
That would be Nextel Cup next year, but yeah, that would be
Still
the
Cup.
only way to top that.
That would be the only way to top it.
And now it's Sprint Cup, but you get the idea. Hi, I'm Mei Chin, learning all this stuff for the first time.
Okay, do you have any idea you get the idea what we're doing here today?
Sure.
Okay, anything you want to add to what we've said so far?
I think you got it covered.
The one thing I want to do is, Chuck, pull your camera shot back and show what we've got here. I don't know, you guys have changed I'm going to say junkyard again so everybody understands. You guys have changed the junkyard business. I've never seen guys more worried about the safety of this stuff in my entire life. Are they always this way?
Yeah, that's how we do business now.
Guys, they didn't have torches here. I had to bring torches. How does a boneyard not have torches?
We use cut-off saws and things that don't make sparks these days.
I know, but on television, I want sparks and fire.
We don't do that, though.
I know. Anyhow, I am making these guys crazy. That's why we've got these guys dragged out here. Look at this one's even got safety glasses on. You are?
Antonio Richardson.
Where are you from?
Chicago.
And you're ready in case something happens?
It sure is.
Nothing's going to happen, folks. I've done this stuff a million times. And you've already met the audience, but you were also going to jump in here if we have a problem, right?
Yes, Leroy Ramsey.
Okay, and?
Dave Jedriel, Linwood, Illinois.
Okay, you have any idea what we're going to do here?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you do? Sure. Okay, maybe explain it to me because I sort of lost it. Tell the folks who you are.
Mike Fishman, St. John, Indiana.
Okay, and what's your role here?
I'm a dismantler.
Okay, so what we're going to do here, folks, is that we have, again, one of the reasons I like being hooked up with these guys is they can come up with pretty much everything automotive. If you remember over the years, do you remember the famous cup show? When we had all the styrofoam cups representing the engine configurations where you guys got V8s and opposed 6s and all the rest of it for me. We did that. How about the one where you guys pulled the plug out of the oil pan and let the engine run without oil in it?
Yeah, blew that car up. That was my daughter driving there.
Yeah, exactly. He's not. That's not true at all. By the way, one thing I got to tell these guys. How old are you?
44.
And how old is your brother Joe?
I have no idea. Younger than me.
Younger than you?
Yeah.
And when it come time to grab, Chuck, swing your camera shot around and show the audience who's in a forklift. If it come time to move these cars around in a forklift, who goes in? What are you guys doing? How come the young guys didn't jump up there?
No, Dad does that. That's his machine. Nobody touches it.
You know, I was just teasing. I was just talking to him off camera. I'm going to tell you something. Yeah. You know why?
Tell me
because he really likes it, and he said so.
Oh, he loves it. Yeah, he loves to do that.
I'm the same way. I would too. Believe me, if I had one of those, that'd be mine, and I'd be the one using it too. Okay, what we're going to do here now, folks, and that's the reason they've gotten all nervous about the safety thing. Once again, I'll be the first to admit I have little concern with those things, but I actually don't have to because these guys are so worried about it. What we're going to do is we're going to tip these cars up on their side. We've got the Subaru behind us. It's an all-wheel drive car, and we've got the Jeep that's a four-wheel drive vehicle, and I want to show you what the difference is between them. Essentially, there is no difference in that when you say all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, you're talking about all four wheels driving the car. But in common language, there are some differences. The four-wheel drive vehicles are the ones that we refer to that are the big, rugged, heavy, four-wheel drive, solid banjo units. Now, we showed you the independent suspension on a Subaru before. Well, you don't have that on real four-wheel drive vehicles. You've got big banjo units. We're going to show you all that in a minute when we roll them up on their side. They're big, heavy banjo units. They also have very little application for the street because, I guess I'll get into this right now. The problem with driving all of the wheels, and here's the problem. All the wheels have to be able to turn at different speeds and have power sent to them. That is real hard to do. For example, when you go around a corner, the inside wheels cover less distance than the outside wheels. So if you're going to send power to both of those wheels and they're turning at different speeds, how do you do that? Complicated further with all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. Right front wheel goes down a dip. The right rear wheel hasn't seen that dip yet. The right wheel, front wheel is covering a longer distance. The wheels have to be able to turn at different speeds and yet send power to all of them. It's a real hard job. It's actually a real hard job. We're going to explain that in a minute. It's a real hard job to just on a two-wheel drive to get the two rear wheels, to get them both delivering power and turning at different speeds. Now, what happens if you don't turn? You used to drive, right? Race cars?
Nope, never drove.
Well, you were crew chief?
True.
Okay. Solid axle car, when you weld the spider gears up so the two rear wheels are turning together. What happens when you're pushing the car, you and the guys, and the driver turns?
The car doesn't move anymore.
It stops.
Correct.
You have no, folks, you have to take my word for this. You have no idea how much resistance there is in there. When both wheels are supposed to be turning and you push them in a straight line, and what these guys do on these short track cars is lock up the rear axle so both rear wheels have to turn. Well, you go ahead and make a left turn or a right turn where the inside wheel is supposed to turn slower, that vehicle stops because you have to actually come up with enough power to scrub the tires against the ground, the one on the outside going a little bit farther, the one on the inside a little bit less. Real hard to do. Now contrast that with a vehicle that has all four wheels driven. You almost couldn't take it down the road. Any kind of dips and everything like that would literally stop the vehicle from the resistance between. But if you had enough power to overcome all that, you use a ton of fuel, scrub off a ton of rubber. It is a real, agreed, hard job.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's a real difficult job. Anyhow, so that's what we're going to do here today. And the reason we've got everybody standing by here is we are going to, now they didn't want to do this either, by the way, folks. I wanted this on camera. I think it's cool. I think it's cool that we're going to have flames and sparks. You don't want flames and sparks.
No, not good.
I know. So we're really, this is all me, and they're bending over backwards to accommodate me. And same thing, they wanted to put the cars up on their side. I said, no, it'd be cool on camera. I want to see us do this on camera. And they said, oh, no, Bill, I don't. They've agreed. They're going to do it. So we're going to get everybody out of the way, and Jim Sr. is going to take and turn these things up, and hopefully we're going to show you that as he does it. Don't go away. It's going to get real interesting here when we show you the all-wheel drive versus four-wheel drive.
Bill wanted the ABC folks to have a half dozen guys with cutting torches burning the pieces he's talking about off the cars.
He thought the sparks flying in all directions would make great television.
As it turns out, he had to bring his own torch, and there was only one guy at ABC that still knew how to do it.
Things sure have changed over the years.
They sure have. But at least we can have a little fun watching Jim Sr. turn over the cars.
Before we run out of time, we want to acknowledge the folks who made this updated episode of Motorsports Unlimited possible. Art Lauschot and me, I'm May Chin.
Okay, enough of the fun part. Let's get back to the learning.
Bill wants to begin this segment by explaining how the manufacturers make it possible to send power to both rear wheels while allowing them to turn at different speeds.
Also, notice how heavy the parts are in the rear end.
It's easy to see how making this sprung weight instead of unsprung weight would significantly change the sprung to unsprung weight ratio. I have no idea what I just said.
Maybe that's the reason I don't remember any of this.
So that two wheels turn and deliver power and still be able to turn at different speeds. Well, this is a device that does it, and you know, it's actually interesting. We all take this stuff for granted. In fact, these guys here at the I'm going to say boneyard. I keep saying that. Auto recycling, I'm sorry. You guys throw these around like they're garbage.
All the time.
All the time. But it's actually a very clever device. What we're looking at here, if you remember what I showed you earlier with the Jeep in the background, this one's a little smaller unit, but it's exactly the same thing. This is the rear end. This housing here, this whole unit across here is called a banjo unit. This is what we call the rear end. And what this device does, can you turn the yoke a little bit? I want the audience to keep going a little bit more, keep going a little bit more. Okay, what he's turning the yoke. That's where the drive shaft comes from the engine of the car. And if you'll notice, it doesn't actually turn the axles. Go ahead and turn it again. Chuck, keep your shot tight here. You see what it's actually turning is this ring gear that turns this assembly with these gears, and you can turn it back the other way now. These gears that are called spider gears in here. The spider gears are actually what turns the axle. And this device, this very clever, which was developed sometime back around the turn of the century, is what makes it possible to send power to both rear wheels and still have the rear wheels turning at different speeds. Because what will happen if you hold that axle there so it doesn't turn, and if I turn this one, if Chuck, is that visible? Can you see what happens there? That I can move this one and he's holding that one free, and yet you can turn the yoke and it sends power. Go ahead and turn the yoke. It sends power to both of the rear wheels. There is a peculiar problem though with the differential. It's a confounded darn thing. Is it will send the power to the wheel that least needs it. Now you don't have any problem with that if you're going down the highway at 60 miles an hour. It's not a problem. If you're driving around the city streets, it's not a problem. When do you think it might be a problem? When you got snowy streets and you're stuck.
Or it's wet out. Or
if you're stuck, you're on the side of the road and you're stuck because the wheel with the least traction is the one that will spin. It is a characteristic of the differential. Now we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. I just wanted you to see that it's really a hard job just to get two wheels, in this case rear wheel drive, just to get two wheels getting power and turning at different speeds. The differential is responsible for that. So now if we come over here by the cars, this is a Subaru up on its side. These are the pieces that we just showed you, that the differential, this part is actually bolted to the chassis now on this one. This is what has those gears that I just showed you. It has it inside here. And if we come down over here all the way to the Jeep, and this is big guy four-wheel drive stuff. This is the banjo. Again, the banjo unit you just looked at. The rear end is in here. Here's the drive shaft coming from the engine. But these are four-wheel drive vehicles. Well, guess what? That means you need one of these at the front also, because the front wheel is the same problem. You've got to have the wheels turn at different speeds and put power to both of them. So we've got the banjo unit at the front, and you've got to be able to take the power. Now the power on this one comes out the back of the transmission. That's the engine up there, back of the transmission, goes right back here to the yoke that you saw saw Dave turning on the other one. However, you got to get some power going to the front too. So if you notice, we've got a transfer case here. The transfer case sends power up to this differential. So it has these wheels turning. Now one thing I want to point out to you, a peculiarity of four-wheel drive that most people don't know until they get themselves stuck. In fact, four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive has come to mean that you're going to get stuck 100 yards further than where you got stuck before, because they are not invincible. For example, if these are not locking differentials with positive traction or some form like that, or torsion, it means you can get this wheel spinning and one of the wheels in the back spinning, and because you have differentials between them, the other wheels aren't trying to work, and you can be quite stuck with a four-wheel drive, with what's called a four-wheel drive vehicle. You can be quite stuck with it, and at the same time wondering how come all four wheels aren't turning. Now they get around this somewhat. Some of the four-wheel drive vehicles have what they call locking hubs, where you can take and lock and unlock the hubs, and they'll have locking differentials in here to try to get all the wheels hooked up. However, you also need to do the same thing in the back and the same thing through the transfer case. Now this is a problem now. This is again how we define all-wheel drive from four-wheel drive. Four-wheel drive, you just have a very simple device here. You've got a transfer case. It's just a chain-driven piece off of here. So it means if this is turning, then this is turning, and this is turning. It's a very simple device. Problem is, for all-wheel drive, you want all kinds of different torque splits. For example, most of the all-wheel drive cars will have 60% of the, depending, if it's, for example, an Audi is going to have 60 to 80% of the power going to the front wheels, 20% of the power going to the back wheels, unless the front wheels start getting in trouble and start to spin, then it transfers more power to the back wheels. Now, how did they do that? Obviously, there's no provision for any of that in here. Well, that's part of what we're going to explain today. It is a very, very difficult job to send power to all four wheels and have all four wheels turning at different speeds, because remember, you're not going down a billiard table. This one's going to hit a bump in the road. The one in back hasn't hit that bump yet, so this one has to travel a longer distance. That one's a slower distance, so on and so forth. Real hard job to make a car all-wheel drive. Now, come over and contrast that with the little Subi, and once again, I want to say once again, Subaru doesn't get nearly enough respect, and I blame it on them. I think they've got the world's worst advertising campaign. It is such a technically sophisticated piece compared to all of the other imports out of Japan, and yet they don't seem to get the credit that they should for this. All the Subarus are all-wheel drive. And you might be interested to know that Subaru has 4 different all-wheel drive systems. I think I mentioned earlier, depending on whether it's an automatic transmission, if it's a stick shift, if it's an off-road, or if it's an on-road, 4 different ways of doing this same thing, of getting all 4 wheels driving, but at different speeds. Now, how can you do that? How can we do it? Let's take it to its simplest point. Let's say that we've got everything positively hooked up. All 4 wheels turn together with the drive shaft coming out of the engine. Now we've got to get one. How about the rear wheel? We've got to get one rear wheel turning at a different speed than another rear wheel. Okay, put a differential in there. You already saw what the differential looks like. That will accomplish that. Now let's go to the front. Same problem here. We need one wheel to turn at a different speed than the other. Well, we've got a differential in here. But how about the split between how much power goes to the front wheels, how much power goes to the rear wheels? Well, in the case of this unit, this has got a simple transfer case. There is no torque split between the two of them. It's power is going to this axle, power is going to this axle all the time. You come over to the Subaru, and I don't know which system this one has in it, but they do it several different ways. One of the ways they do it is what's called a viscous coupling. A viscous coupling takes advantage of peculiar properties of silicone. They have a silicone, how can I explain this? Almost like, think of it like an automatic transmission torque converter with a silicone fluid in it. And as long as the units are both turning at the same speed, nothing happens with the silicone. When they start turning at different speeds, the heat in the silicone makes it get real heavy, and that starts turning them together. The advantage of that is you get a nice additional power to whatever wheel you're trying to send it to. And by the way, you can do this as far as front to rear wheels and side to side. You get a nice flow of power, a nice smooth power application. Problem is, there's a delay in it. It takes a little time, and I'm talking about seconds, for that silicone fluid to build up some heat so that it starts getting real heavy. So there's another approach to doing this, and what they're using is things that are either electromechanical or hydraulic systems, where they have clutch packs, very similar to automatic transmissions, where they have clutch packs and a computer sensing the speed of all the wheels. And if this wheel starts to spin, it'll release the clutch pack a little bit, so we're not sending power to that wheel and sending it to the other wheels. Same thing all the way around. That's another way of doing it. The viscous coupling is one, electromechanical is another, electrohydraulic is another. The idea is, once again, somehow the motor has to send power to all of the wheels, with all of the wheels turning at different speeds. And worse than that, sometimes situations where, for example, let's say that the right wheels are on a soft shoulder and it's a snowy, icy condition and there's no traction on the right side. Well, you want the left side wheels to pull. Somehow a computer in the vehicle has got to sense that that's what's happening and direct the powers to the wheels that have traction. It is not an easy problem. My own feeling is that they haven't really arrived at a complete solution on this stuff yet. I think eventually, although I really like, first of all, let me say this, I love what Audi has done with the Quattro. That has just been breakthrough work. Subaru, they've done breakthrough work with this stuff. They really have. If you notice, Mercedes now has a system called 4MATIC. Porsche has a system. Volkswagen has a system. The Lamborghini Diablo is an all-wheel drive vehicle with all-wheel drive system based on Audi's work, I believe. So they're all doing a lot of work in this area. But I think the final piece of this puzzle is going to be when they connect it with a traction control system. Now, what traction control systems are, quite simply, what's the easiest one to explain? Let's explain it on the big one here. It could work on anything. We've got the differential here. We're sending power to both rear wheels, and we know, because of what I've already explained, we know that the wheel without the traction is where the thing is going to send the power to it, unless it has a Torsen differential. I'll get to that in a minute. But in a normal differential, the one that spins is the one the thing's going to send power to. Well, what a traction control does is it applies a little bit of brake on that wheel. So as far as the vehicle knows, that wheel is getting more and more traction. And when you apply the brake harder and harder, it will eventually send the power to the other wheel, because that's the one that ends up having the least traction, even though it's the one with the most traction. I know that doesn't make a bit of sense. It doesn't make sense as I say it, but I do know what I'm saying. Point being is traction controls is by manipulating the brakes, is to, when you've got a wheel spinning, to keep it from spinning and send the power to the other ones. Now, I think a combination of viscous couplings, hydraulic or mechanical clutch packs, in conjunction with a computer sensing all of the wheels, sending the power to all the wheels, I think eventually we're going to have all cars with all-wheel drive. This stuff that we've got here is really only the beginning. I mentioned before, too, by the way, a Torsen differential. Now, again, I can't, Chuck, come back over here to the differential. I can't do this for you, folks. Some of the folks that are out there that are pretty advanced technical will understand what I'm going to say. The rest of you just kind of take my word for it. The characteristics of this can be altered with something called a Torsen differential. I first heard about the Torsen differentials in Formula One about 10 or 15 years ago. There were whispers of some kind of a rear end these guys were using. They were driving out of the corners considerably harder than the other guys were. I think Ferrari got it first. And as it turns out, because there's a rumor mill and people trying to find out what people are doing and all that, turns out it's a company in America that developed this Torsen differential. Torsen is short for the two words torque sensing differential. And it's entirely mechanical. Very, very interesting. Instead of having spider gears in this traditional sense, what they've got is worm gears and spur gears, and they're based upon the principle that you can turn a spur gear with a worm gear, but you can't turn a worm gear with a spur gear. By having a collection of worm gears arranged in such a way that when the power is coming at this from the axle, they can turn independentally. When the power is coming at it from the yoke, they must all turn together. It's really a very, very clever thing. It's kind of revolutionized differentials and racing differentials, the Torsen design. I don't want to go into it much more than that because it gets way, way too technical. But if you take the Torsen design then, the Torsen differentials, and you would use it here and perhaps here, you're getting very close to an ideal all-wheel drive setup, except you still need to have traction control when one of the wheels starts to spin, that you can hold that with a brake, or it does it for you actually. Problem with that is that most of the traction control systems are used in conjunction with the ABS braking systems, and the ABS braking systems don't just put the brakes on, they do a pulse setting, they pulse the brakes. Well, that doesn't really work for traction. That's fine for braking, doesn't work for traction. So we're not quite there yet. Anyway, important thing now is I want to give you an idea. I hope you understand the all-wheel drive and the four-wheel drive thing, and when I get done with this segment, I'll talk to Chuck off camera to see if I made any sense and have to correct anything.
I'm with Janine on this one. I can't believe Bill expected her to remember all this.
I want to get back now to the sprung versus unsprung weight. If you will notice, this stuff is all unsprung weight. All of this sits on the ground. This sits on the ground. A piece of the spring, and again, part of the spring is bolted to the chassis. So a piece of the spring is sprung, moves up and down with the chassis. Piece of this spring, this part is not sprung. It sits here. It's bolted solidly to the banjo. So this is unsprung weight, and this will be sprung weight. So I'll just say, okay, we'll cut it right here. We'll say this part of it was sprung, this part of it was unsprung. All of this stuff is unsprung weight. All of this stuff is unsprung weight, and it gives a terrible sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Coming back over here to the little Subi, which is really cleverly designed, and by the way, Mercedes is done like this, and a variety of other cars that have very sophisticated suspension systems. This is sprung. The only part that's not sprung, I'm going to, again, rough justice, I'm going to say right here. I'm going to say this part is riding with the chassis, this part is riding with the tires. So we'll cut this right here. This part will be the unsprung weight. This part is then sprung weight. Same thing up here. If you notice here, Chuck, come up with your camera shot here. All of this stuff here, all of this stuff is all sprung weight, all rides with the chassis. The only thing that doesn't ride with the chassis is the wheel, the tire, a piece of this A-frame. Part of it you see is bolted to the chassis, part of it is bolted to the hub. This part of it is unsprung, this part of it is sprung. We'll cut it here, we'll say, okay, that much of that weight is there, that much of that weight is there. And what I want you to do is we're going to cut these pieces up. Now, this is why I wanted the torches and the fire, and I can see these guys are all getting crazy right now. Folks, once again, let me explain. This is for me. I brought my stuff down here to do this, and they're standing by, I can't believe, with fire extinguishers and something, just because this is theatrical. I want to see some sparks and flames.
We'll get to the sparks and flames in a moment, but first let's recap.
The four-wheel drive vehicles are generally rugged, simple, industrial, truck-like efforts to keep vehicles from getting stuck out in the rough with little regard for sprung to unsprung weight ratios.
And the all-wheel drive systems are more sophisticated automobile application devices with considerable attention given to achieving favorable sprung to unsprung weight ratios.
Ideally, you would want a car with four wheels driving, but only when needed.
And with extremely light unsprung weight.
Now it's time for the fire and sparks.
That's right. Bill wants you to see a graphic demonstration of the difference in sprung to unsprung weight of four-wheel drive vehicles versus all-wheel drive vehicles.
First, let's see how big of a pile of unsprung weight we can get from all-wheel drive Subaru. Okay, that's all the unsprung weight removed from the all-wheel drive Subaru.
Now let's make a pile out of the unsprung weight on the four-wheel drive Jeep. Well, there it is. All of the unsprung weight has been removed from the four-wheel drive Jeep.
Let's compare.
Well, there it is. This pile of stuff represents the unsprung weight from the Jeep. And if I can get a couple of the guys, this guy's been working too hard. Maybe get this fellow over here, and you two guys, I want you to show the audience how light that stuff is. This is something, I have no way of demonstrating this on camera visually, so why don't you guys take and toss the one over the other? Yeah, well, you're not going to move it at all. That's my point. No, not going to move that, right?
No.
What do you think? No. And by the way, I don't think we've introduced you yet. Who are you?
I'm Ira.
Ira what?
Thomas.
From where?
ABC Auto Parts.
Yeah, but where do you live?
In Riverdale.
And once again, you got safety glasses too.
Yes.
I have never in my life, and I worked for United Airlines for 18 years, I have never run into a more safety-oriented bunch. You can kind of expect it from the boss because they're always going to be kind of a pain about that. But every one of these guys, that's all they're talking about is say, oh, I don't know if that's safe. I've been really twisting arms today, haven't I?
That's a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing.
I know, I've been twisting arms. First of all, Mike, nice job out there. It looks like you do know how to handle I had to bring torches down. Can you imagine that a boneyard doesn't have torches anymore? They had to find a guy, one of their guys, that could still operate torches.
Thanks, Bill.
And you could.
Oh, yeah.
You've been doing this for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is the old day stuff.
The old day stuff, old school, still got it down.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. These things, what I would have liked to have had, we don't have it. I would like to have had like a big scale or something where we could throw this stuff on a scale. Believe me, the guys cannot lift these. This stuff is really, really heavy. And this is all part of, as I explained earlier in the program, this is all part of the unsprung weight. You've got the differentials here, the differential in there, the heavy banjo units, the big heavy springs, wheels, brakes, everything. This is not careful design. This is rugged simplicity, simple design, and I think quite dated. Contrast that now over here with what Subaru does, and not just Subaru, I should say Audi, Mercedes. There's a number of car companies. In fact, all the car companies that are going in this direction now, and eventually they'll all be in this direction. But look at how light these little pieces are. Hopefully that's not still hot. Even me in a suit, I can take and pick this up. That's one corner, another corner, another corner, another corner. And this is the total unsprung weight of the Subaru using fully independent suspension. There's a couple of things. Now you might look at that and say, well, Bill, what else could you really do? Well, Chuck, can you see the brake drums in here? Guys, maybe you could tilt this up for me here so I don't get... Okay, Chuck, can you see the brake drums in here? Well, another way you can be clever with the design, I had an Audi 100 LS many years ago. It was a front-wheel drive car, and instead of having the brakes out here, because these brakes are now unsprung weight, instead of having them out here, Chuck, bring your shot over here. They had disc brakes, and they put them up here close to the transmission, and the discs, the big heavy disc rotors then became part of the sprung weight instead of the unsprung weight. Now Jaguar XKEs are like that also. Those are rear-wheel drive cars where they have the disc rotors close to the rear end and part of the sprung weight of the vehicle instead of being part of the unsprung weight. It makes a significant difference in handling. The lighter you can make this stuff in relationship to the rest of the vehicle, the better the ride, the better the handling, and it's very, very important. So you hot rodders out there looking to make your cars better and stuff like that, even if you have more sophisticated design chassis like a lot of the sport compacts, you take a look close. Like here, as good a job as Subaru has done, if it were me, I would have wanted inboard disc brakes on this thing rather than the outboard brakes, again, to save some of that unsprung weight.
Okay, I get it. My Lincoln MKZ has all-wheel drive, not four-wheel drive.
How are we doing, Jim? We making any sense of all this?
Oh, absolutely,
These
Bill.
poor guys, I'm telling you, I love these guys. The time that we were down here, took the oil pan off the engine. What I wanted to show the audience, now mind you, you have to understand, folks, this ruins the engine. They can't do anything more, but I had to have a running engine to do this. We put it up on a lift, took the oil pan off. The whole idea is I wanted to show you that these things run under pressure. They're plain bearings and they run under pressure, and the oil is going to fly out as it squeezes out behind. And we demonstrated it beautifully, but lost the engine.
No, blew it completely up.
Yeah, now look what we've got here. Two more that are trash.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, well, I listen, seriously, our audience appreciates it too. I hope, now, you've been in business. Did you know all of this or any of this kind of interesting information to you, what we've been talking about all day?
Bill, anything that you have to offer is absolutely fascinating.
Here we
Absolutely
go.
fascinating.
How about it, guys? You guys work on this stuff all the time. Did you learn anything with it? Did you find it of interest?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah, because I was talking to Jim Watson Sr., your dad. I was talking to your dad, and he said he'd never thought of it that way either. He knows the heavy cars ride better. Like you said, if you put a car on a flatbed truck, the truck rides better then. But it's not because it's heavier. It's because of the ratio of sprung to unsprung weight. You can have a car that weighs 1,000 pounds, give excellent riding and handling if it's only got 20 pounds of unsprung weight. The best way to think about it, in fact, it was I had an engineer years ago tell me, he says, Bill, you don't see too many of these anymore, but I had seen them. They used to have these little one-wheel trailers. If you remember, they had two clamps onto the rear bumper of a car and then one wheel in the middle. You watch one of them go down the road empty, that spring in the back doesn't even move. The thing just bung, bung, bung. You load it, and now it rides. And it's not because it's heavier. It's because you've changed the sprung to unsprung weight ratio. Real important. It's just really hard to somehow, without millions of dollars of test equipment to put human beings in these things, everything. You have to kind of take my word for it. This is a big advantage, reducing the unsprung weight of the car. Well, once again, my friend, thank you so much, and I want to talk just for a moment a little bit more. First of all, I want to see if this kind of works. I encourage folks all the time to get involved in motorsports. I encourage companies. Now, this is not, this is funny because I kind of consider this like a big company. It's not really like a big company, right?
Oh, no, we're a small business.
Yeah, well, you're really not. To me, a small business is like one or two people. You got like 75 people or something, right?
Pretty much,
yeah. So, I mean, what I'm saying is so to me, it's kind of a big business, but it's not the size of a business that would sponsor a Winston Cup car all over the country or something like that. That would take DuPont and Kellogg's and...
Well, it depends on what your target market is and how involved you want to be and where your customers are.
Right, but my point is that there are opportunities to participate in motorsports if you're real smart about it. I thought what you guys did, and we talked about this last year, by going on the Renzi. Now we should say that Renzi is Ed Renzi, I should say, is the former president of McDonald's. He was president of McDonald's for many, many years, a true racer, as much of a racer as any of the rest of us have been rolling around in the pits all our lives. And he has been working his way up from a Santa Fe car to a LaSalle car and finally up to a ARCA, then a Busch car and all that. And I think they're going to go Winston Cup next year. Whether it'll be next year or the year after, I don't know, but I think it's going to go there. But so here you got kind of a local guy. He's a local guy, and this is a local company. Okay, you guys can't get on board for the tune of $6 or $7 million a year, but you can throw in a few bucks at the race, the one race they run in the Chicago area. My question is, here's the employees. What do you think? You guys proud of that when you see the ABC on the car?
Very proud, very proud.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to. It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pictures all over the house.
Pictures all. Is that right? Okay. Well, I guess that's part of what I want to say is that I want to encourage other small businesses, and even though I don't call this exactly small, but if you know what I mean, I'm not talking about catalogs and General Motors, but I want to encourage their employees can feel good about this stuff. This is not a bad way to take some of your advertising dollars and put it into motorsports. Obviously, I'm interested in the motorsport community and helping the motorsport, but I think it can help the businesses too.
Oh, it's money well spent. It really is. And there's different levels of participation. Just contact the team, see what they need, see what you could do, and I'm sure they'll work with you. They need the money. They really do.
And it works out so well with you with Renzi because these guys are local guys.
Oh, they're local, and we went in to have a good time and to have our customers come and have a good time, and Ed and Sam and Gary, they all got together, put a package together for us. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and they go and they treat our customers just like they're part of the team, just like they're part of the crew, and it's just phenomenal. It's really nice.
We're going to do a whole show about this because your effort this year was above and beyond when you guys ended up in the winner's circle. And Paul Bushman right away emails me some pictures from the winner's circle. He was happy as a lark. Now, that doesn't really often happen.
No, not much. But when you're on the track and you're in the pits and the cars are running and they come in and you're there when it's all taking place, you're part of it. You're right there. And then, when the car's in the winner's circle and everybody takes the mad dash to make it there, it's just so exciting. It's great.
It really is. No other experience can compare to that, I don't think.
No, not at all. No, it's a rush.
Okay, well, first of all, once again, I want to thank all of you guys. Mike, great job with the torch. I can't believe we had to try to find a guy that could operate a torch and a boat. I can't believe it. Anyhow, and thank these guys again. I hope the audience has learned from this. This is actually real important, real valuable information. And please, if I haven't explained it right or you still don't understand, kind of let us know because I'll do it again. These guys are willing to tear cars apart, apparently.
We really want to thank the ABC folks. They sacrificed 2 vehicles to help us explain some very technical stuff to you. Unfortunately, as always, we're out of time with only enough left to acknowledge the fine work of our award-winning production team, including Chuck Itzenthaler, Sue Cassanda, our webmaster Frank Barbalace, Rena Borwitz, and Tom McGrady. Special thanks to JBTV's Jerry Bryant. Music is created for us by Fireside Recording Studio in Westchester, Illinois, and by independent artists Roger Pauley and Jerry Herbert. Of course, we have to take a moment to thank the stars of this edition of Motorsports Unlimited: Janine Lauschat, Patty Borwitz, and our host, Bill Wildt. Me, I'm Samantha Bentley, admitting that I'll have to spend some time thinking about this. But I really do think I understand. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
This program made possible in part by support from J.C. Whitney & Company, located just off I-80 at the Utica exit in LaSalle, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Jimmy's Red Hots, located on Grant Avenue and Pulaski Road in Chicago.
Motorsports Unlimited is produced by Bill Wildt, president of the Motorsport Advancement Crusade.
This program made possible in part by support from ABC Auto Parts, located on Ashland Avenue at 138th Street in Blue Island, Illinois.
This program made possible in part by support from Bridgestone Firestone and your local Bridgestone Firestone tire retailers.
This program made possible in part by support from Copy That, located in the County Farm Plaza at County Farm Road and Army Trail Road in Carroll Stream, Illinois. Motorsports Unlimited was created to raise public consciousness, understanding, and appreciation of the motorsport community and their activities. You can contact us by email at msutv.com, or you can write to Motorsport, P.O. Box 66242, Chicago, Illinois, 60666. We enjoy hearing from our audience. Please let us know what you think.
Next week on Motorsports Unlimited, we begin to get you ready for the outdoor summer car show season. It'll be here before you know it, and you have to be ready. Same goes for the boaters and bikers out there. The long winter months are coming to an end. We're going to help you get energized for the summer next week on Motorsports Unlimited.
So that's it, another edition of Motorsports Unlimited and the lovely ladies of motorsports. And be with us next week because we'll have something real exciting. Bill Wildt's going to have the lovely ladies, and just about anything can happen right here on Motorsports Unlimited. Every week at this time, we bring you the best in motorsports. So be seeing ya. Bye-bye. And keep on rocking.